Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar on improvements to EPA processes. My name is Rohini Bhattacharya, and I am the Director of Apprenticeships for Pearson, and I'm joined by my colleague, Andrew Pollard,
EPA Quality Manager.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew and I will take you through some of the improvements that we are putting in place. Some of them are operational now, and some of them will be operational shortly. So we'll talk you through those changes. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please do use your questions chat box, which should be seen by yourself on the right-hand panel that you have on your screens on the GoToWebinar. So we'll kick off now, and we'll go through the questions midway through the webinar and then at the end as well. Some of you would be aware already about the endpoint assessment systems changes that we have made. So we have made the move from the smart EPA system to the AS360 system. We will talk about that briefly. Sorry about that, there were some changes we're going through. Okay. We are also going to look at the on the AS360 system. We'll talk about briefly about the learner registrations and the dates. We'll look at gateway submissions very briefly, and Andy will talk about the test bookings, given that we are on AS360 at the moment. Then we'll talk briefly about gateway and EPA approvals. We will look at some of the lead IQA responsibilities, which we are enhancing shortly. We'll talk about some of the SLAs that we will be introducing on EPA delivery shortly. And then finally, we will touch upon invoicing, given we are looking at the AS360 system going forwards. So let's start with the EPA systems, talking about the move from smart EPA to the AS360 system. So as some of you would be aware, and hopefully all of our customers who have joined us should be aware that we are now using the AS360 system. So Pearson made that move from SEPA to AS360 as of the 5th of August. There were a number of emails that were sent out to our contracted customers who had been registered with us on SEPA. So phase 1 was initiated as of 5th of August, and all base records for the learners were transferred over to AS360. Not all of our customers had made that initial jump from SEPA to AS360. So obviously, in order to register yourself with AS360, you need to get in touch with them, and they can create an account for you, and they also do the onboarding for our customers. So because we did not cover everybody in the phase 1, we are now running phase 2 of that transition, which is running right now actually till the 13th of September, so till the end of this week. And again, in that phase 2, we will be transferring all of the base records to AS360. The second part of both of these phases, which is essentially once we have transferred all of the base records into AS360, we need to ensure that learners who have completed their EPA results would be visible on AS360 as well. That is currently in process at the moment, and we are hoping that we should complete that by the beginning of next week, which is the 16th. And that would cover all of the learners whose records are on AS360, both for phase 1 and for phase 2. In terms of learner registrations, now the process, as most of you are using ACE 360 and who have used SEPA before would have guessed, the system of putting the registrations for learners on ACE 360 is different. So one of the things that we wanted to highlight today was having that clarity on the apprenticeship end date, which is the date that you put on ACE 360 when you register the learner on the system. Now, for Pearson, we want to have that end date that you put on ACE 360 as the date that the learner finishes the on program. That will give us the visibility that we have 3 months from the apprenticeship end date to then complete the endpoint assessment. As some of you might be aware already, there has been some changes in terms of the guidance that has come through from ESFA around having at least a minimum of 12 weeks notification for EPAs, which gives them time to actually complete the endpoint assessment for all learners. So just for clarity, when you are entering a learner record on ACE 360, the apprenticeship end date, if you choose Pearson as your endpoint assessment organization, should be the date that the learner ends their on program. The other aspect of ACE 360 are the different stages that the learner record goes through. So in terms of gateway approved, which is a particular stage on ACE 360, just want to clarify that that gateway approved is the stage where the training provider, the employer, and the apprentice agree that the apprentice is ready for gateway. And once the record for the learner on ACE 360 has been approved for gateway, obviously the training provider needs to upload a series of documentation which are essential evidence that the apprentice is ready. So things like their maths and English eligibility, some of the employer references for some of the standards, any qualifications that they are needed to complete as part of any mandatory requirements for the on program. All of that evidence needs to go on to ACE 360, and that record is then transferred over to the endpoint assessment organization that you have chosen. And the stage where it says approved for EPA is when the EPA accepts the apprentice record and all of that documentation that you have submitted, and agree that we will now progress with the EPA scheduling for the apprentice. So those are those two changes in terminology, rather 3 with the end date as well. 3 changes in terminologies from what we were referring to on SEPA vis-a-vis what we are going to refer to on ACE 360 as well. So talking about the EPA systems, I'm going to hand over to Andy now, who will talk about the test bookings from here on.
So with regards to test bookings for multiple choice tests, we have further enhanced our Pearson process. We have opened up Edexcel Online to all contracted customers to enable them to book their own multiple choice tests. One key thing to bear in mind with regards to booking multiple choice tests is that the apprentice must have gone through Gateway before this occurs. With regards to paper-based tests, a new test delivery team has been set up within Pearson who will then support the dispatch, invigilation, marking and the results process in relation to the healthcare support worker, team leader, healthcare assistant practitioner and supply chain EPAs. With regards to the test results, as of the 1st of October, we have included some further service level agreements. With regards to paper-based tests, taking into consideration the dispatch, the receipt, the marking of the paper-based test, we have included a 10-day service level agreement where the results will be made available on ACE 360. Where there are on-screen tests, the results will be made visible on Edexcel Online within 48 hours. In addition, the 5 working day service level agreement, which already exists, we will make sure that the test result is made available on ACE alongside the remaining components of that endpoint assessment. When we consider gateway and EPA approvals, just picking up on what Rahina was saying previously, with regards to ACE 360, it is different from our previous system, CEPA. The default process and evidence requirements for gateway approval is submitted and uploaded by yourselves as training providers. The endpoint assessment organisation can accept or reject gateway approved record. And just to give an example with regards to rejection of gateway evidence, it could be an incorrect maths certificate that's been uploaded, or the on-programme qualification certificate is inaccurate. Using ACE 360, there will be dialogue between whoever is signing off the gateway back to the training provider. Once accepted, the apprentice record is then approved for endpoint assessment, and then the endpoint assessment organisation will schedule EPA delivery as the following next steps. So from the 1st of October 2019, our independent endpoint assessors will be accepting and rejecting gateway evidence. This is then to support our development with regards to assessor interaction with you as the training provider, and remove some of the steps which is currently taken to organise and schedule endpoint assessments. With regards to service level agreements, the turnaround of gateway submissions is 5 working days post gateway approval submission by the training provider. Within those 5 days, the independent endpoint assessor is then tasked to complete the gateway check within 3 working days. We've also enhanced our assessment team with an introduction of lead RQAs for various different endpoint assessment standards. The lead RQA will be responsible for overseeing all assessment and internal quality assurance processes in their given EPA standard. Some of the enhanced responsibilities that they've got include be the main point of contact for any assessment or RQA queries, provide input on enquiries and appeals, and produce quarterly reports, which will include trends, analysis and risks, again for their designated EPA standards. With regards to the lead RQA, they will also be responsible for contacting customers if required to clarify certain criteria within the EPA. However, any request for that must come via EPA delivery, and then we can then schedule that. So if we just take a moment now just to answer any questions that have come in.
No, we do not have any questions as yet. Someone just said that the sound quality is breaking up, so perhaps if we just put the laptop next to ourselves, that might help the sound.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So if we consider the different service level agreements that we have got in place, so as of the 1st of October 2019, we're putting some additional service level agreements in place around the scheduling and delivery. And this will include the turnaround for gateway submissions, like I just mentioned on one of the previous slides, the EPA scheduling of actual assessments and the results. So as of the 1st of October 2019, when we consider gateway submissions and EPA approved, within 5 working days post gateway approval submission by the training provider, we will then share that information with the independent endpoint assessor. It's important to note that an assessor mapping exercise has been completed, whereby each training provider / employer will have a group of assessors responsible for gateway, undertaking assessments, providing results. And just as a reminder, the turnaround for independent endpoint assessors to review gateway evidence is 3 working days. With regards to endpoint assessment scheduling, the same independent endpoint assessor who has signed off your apprentice's gateway will also be responsible for scheduling the actual endpoint assessment. With regards to the different EPA components, assessors are now tasked to undertake this activity within 2 working days, with a view that all endpoint assessments are completed between 6 to 8 weeks of the gateway sign off. Again, just as a reminder with regards to the paper-based test results, within 10 working days, the results will be made available on AS360. And with on-screen tests, they will be visible within Edexcel Online within 48 hours. However, the results will be made available within 5 working days on AS360 in line with the other components which have been assessed.
So I will quickly go through the invoicing, which again would be coming into force as of the 1st of October. Most of you would have signed our EPA contracts, which does have a clause of us charging a 10% EPA price. Now, obviously, we've been delivering EPAs for about just over a year now, but we actually haven't enforced that 10% EPA price, primarily because our systems did not allow that. So primarily the SEPA system did not allow for that split invoicing. However, with AS360, all EPA records after the 1st of October that go through, that are approved for EPA from Pearson, they will incur a 10% EPA price, which would be invoiced on a monthly basis. Now, the remainder of that, so the remainder of the 90% of the EPAs will be charged on completion of the first attempt. Resets are going to be charged separately, and again, this is outlined in the agreement. And just to be clear, I know some of our customers have been detailed about this by their respective BTMs, but just to clarify that Pearson are going to be paying the £5 charge, which is applicable per learner on AS360. However, we will only be able to pay that price as a discounted element of the endpoint assessment price. So at the time where we invoice for the 10% of EPA at approval for EPA, we will discount that EPA price by £5, and this should be visible to yourselves or at a learner level on AS360 as well. So we are just working currently with AS360. There is going to be a little bit of a manual process in terms of downloading and uploading of learner records, but hopefully within the month you will see the 10% EPA price discounted by £5 appear against your respective learner records.